Are you ready to scale? Why not invest 3 minutes in our Scalability Index? It's quick, it's easy, and it's got specific guidance. Find it at evokinggenius.com/scale. Hello and welcome to another episode of Genius at Scale. Today's guest is Casey Wu. Casey is the CEO of both the Operators Guild and Fog Ventures. Casey, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, John, it's great to be here. About myself, the short version is I'm an immigrant kid from LA. I have a stint in the military at West Point. Then I studied economics at Harvard and was told that there's 2 steps to Nirvana. Step 1 is go to an island called Manhattan and get a banking job. Step 2 is get a hedge fund private equity job and retire. I made it to the hedge fund step and realized this is probably not the way I want to retire or work. What I was really interested in is building companies. So my first 10 years was military and Wall Street. My second is being an operator. So I've been at over 7 distinct companies from pre-seed to pre-IPO as both CFO, COO, and a lot of phantom titles in between. And along the way, I built a community called the Operators Guild and run an investing syndicate called Fog Ventures. Personally, married with 3 beautiful children, 7, 5, and 3. We were 10 years New York, and now we're 10 years San Francisco Bay Area. And I am really glad to be here.
That's great. Well, welcome. Right off the bat, I'm curious, how did your military and Wall Street adventure, I'll call it, how did it prepare you to be in the C-suite? Because they're very different mentalities and methodologies.
Yes, and as we all probably know, where we've been, makes us who we are, for better or worse.
Yep.
So a few things that stand out. One is West Point. So to be specific, I went to West Point. I never served. We can have a whole nother podcast on my dual undergrad, but I loved many parts about it. So one is you learn about yourself. So how it prepared me was, one is it taught me I loved people. The camaraderie of the military was something I took away. The second in the military is just good old hardship, discipline, hardship, and specifically the way the leadership curriculum at West Point is, part of it is failing. Because when you think about most of people's lives as a civilian, you get to pick the college you go to. If you don't go to college, you don't need to. If you want to go late to class, you can. At West Point, there's no choice like that. And when you went to boxing class, that's not what I picked. You're going to fail. And so anyways, learning to pick yourself up and to deal with the failure and rejection and to move forward. So that was a big one. And just perseverance, right? Determination. Way too long of a rucksack march that is way too painful in disgusting conditions. And guess what? You got to finish it, right? So that happens a lot in startups. Wall Street taught me a ton about what makes a company valuable. Because when you think about investing at the core, it's you're trying to value a business. And if it's too high or too low, you can transact and make money. And so the understanding of business models, how to break them apart, how to analyze them analytically, Excel spreadsheet skills matter a lot, actually, and how to use it. So the tooling of that prepared me really well to become on the corporate side. So I call it sell side, buy side, corporate side. I've circled all 3. And once you circle all 3, it's kind of like you see the 3-dimensional picture. And now, as an operator, it's much more easy for me to understand fundraising, dynamics, who we're speaking to. Oh, it's a banker. What's their incentive? Why do they say that? It's a venture capitalist, different incentive model. different interests. So really understanding asset management, capital markets, and people full circle. And then of course, having built a bunch of businesses has helped me in the whole.
Yeah, that's great. I'm curious, is there is your skill set now like a Venn diagram of the three circles and just the intersection of buy, sell, and corporate?
I never thought about that way, but yes, that's one way to cut it. It's the three dimensionality of businesses, which is investing, building, and I guess the capital market side, advising.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because most founders oftentimes are product people. They say, "Oh, Casey and I founded a product, and now we're going to scale it." And you go, "That's great. We don't understand the sell side. We don't understand fundraising. We learn it as you go." But you had that kind of walking in because you had been on the other side of that.
Yeah, the weird analogy is like I've been an uncle, dad, and son. And that's really so. There's different perspectives, and then you get to see the whole entire family dynamic because you sat in all three seats.
Is there a godfather as well? Is that a different?
I'm sure there is.
That's funny. That's funny. So then, if you took either the Operators Guild or Fogg Ventures, how do you measure or how do you count, if you will, scale? Like how do you measure yourself and say we're scaling or we're not? We're flatlining.
Yeah, scale is a good question. I mean, this one I feel like I try not to overthink it. Scale one, I think, has to do with the second derivative, which is acceleration and speed of change.
Sure.
Or more commonly called growth, right? Just, are you growing fast for your stage?
Yep.
Stage is everything, right? And I call it you're your 3-year-old or your 40-year-old or you're a 70-year-old. Very different what it means to be growing rapidly at those ages.
Yep.
So the first is just speed and acceleration of change. And scaling, to me, yes, is bigger, not smaller. So magnitude. 2 million, all else equal, is better than 1 million. Some people can differ, but that's just my definition of scale. So growing at very fast speeds. Now, scale obviously does not necessarily mean profitability. So if you just ask me specifically scale, it's growing above the peer set. Sorry, I take that back. Scale is just simply growing at a materially rapidly rate and continually getting bigger in magnitude. Specifically hitting scale, translation past product market fit. That's another way of looking at it. It is you're doing very few tweaks to pricing or product, and you're having a hard time keeping up with hiring salespeople.
Yeah, you're just pouring gas on the fire. Yeah,
it's coming. The CAC, to be very, very analytical, the acquisition cost is dropping.
Yep,
that's one way to tell that you are scaling.
I'm curious about a definition. The definition we've used with we work with CEOs mostly is that you're growing 50% faster than your industry. At what point do you compare yourself to your industry rather than just focus on internal metrics and look, we got to worry about ourselves. We don't need to worry about our industry yet.
Yeah, this is where you saw me pull back. I said peer set and then I pulled back.
Yeah,
because I was going down that is definitely the whole like compared to the bell curve, right? So I read your question less as what's considered fast versus normal, which then becomes 50% greater, because the peer set could be growing really fast, like so, and achieving scale. So scale to me is a very individualistic. Has the individual company achieved scale regardless of peer set? I can be big in scaling regardless if my competitors are even bigger.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
right.
But from a relative standpoint, I think what's more interesting is stage. So, of course, industry, biotech is a different size gauge than energy. Like, I get that. I always talk about stage. One example would be dysfunction. So I'll get back to your question about scale, but dysfunction is an easy one. I think all companies are dysfunctional to some degree. But generally speaking, the dysfunction at a early company is a different flavor than at a very, very mature company.
Correct.
It's no different than the dysfunction of a 3-year-old toddler
Versus a teenager.
versus a teenager versus a you and me right now, right?
Right.
Different types of dysfunction. 3-year-olds color on the wall.
Right.
So if you think you're talking to your 40-year-old, you think, oh my gosh, this is the most dysfunctional place ever. But if you compare the company to other early stage 3-year-olds, the dysfunction might be actually better and less. Same thing with scale. So it's the whole classic, when you're really small, 100% growth may not be that fast.
It's interesting you say the thing about the 3-year-old, the teenager, and the 4-year-old. Yeah. We have long maintained when we work in a C-suite, there's only one difference between a 4th grader and a senior VP of marketing. You know what it is? Height. Because the truth is, 40-year-old senior VPs of marketing oftentimes act like a 4-year-old. They just have a better outward appearance, and they're a 4th grader, and it's not a whole lot different. And when you think in those terms, it's much easier to manage them. You just go, oh right, they didn't get picked for the team on the playground. Oh, they're pouting. Oh, okay, now I know what to do. You go, they're just pouting as a 40-year-old about their budget. You go, yeah, I get it. They're being a 4th grader.
Parenting forever. So I would actually take what you said, which is 50% above the peer set, and just throw in the variable stage. That's all.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So sorry, peer set to me might sound like industry, but if it's industry and stage, yeah, I would actually go back with what you just said.
Well, you're hearing it everywhere. People are saying, "Oh my gosh, we're growing like crazy," and think you're in AI. If you're not going like this, you're failing. And they say we're growing 35% a year, and you go, then you're probably behind because the industry's growing 100% a year. So yeah, it's interesting to hear people chirp about themselves. Yeah. And I think, yeah, you'll be dead in 3 years. You'll be
exactly
not going to get acquired, and you're not going to make it. But yeah, that's funny. So I'm curious. Obviously, this is a hard scrabble game. It's you play kind of like your West Point stories. You get a rucksack that's too heavy, and the march is 3 times longer than you want it to be in yucky conditions, and you got a pebble in your shoe. You don't get any other choice. I'm curious, what have been maybe your biggest hacks or your biggest discoveries, perhaps, on what's worked for you specifically to scale organizations? Because you've been in many.
It's a great question. I think there could be a couple different questions you're asking. Is one, how do you push through when things are just getting hard, like the pebble, or are you saying, because scale is a different question to me. You can be pushing hard and it's downsizing. So is the question, what lessons have I learned in scaling and growing, or in pushing through tough times, regardless of what direction you're going?
If you're not tough and you're an entrepreneur, you're going to lose, because it's a tough game, and the game will sort you out. No, I'm more curious about, I've heard some incredible hacks from founders from the podcast where they say, oh, what I learned was this works, and this works for me. It might work for other people or not. I'm curious what you've learned.
Yeah. That's
kind of like maybe an unfair advantage to say, this may not work for everybody, but this works for me, and this is how I get through.
This is a great one, and I want to hear about every single other person's answer to this, because I think that is a really cool question. I have a few. The ones that just come to mind, and once again, I'm not sure if this is answering exactly what you're saying, but one thing I've learned over time, from my first operator job to my 20th, I asked myself, how am I improving? How am I getting better? And I see it when I work with more junior or less experienced people on the team. It's the not even 80-20 rule, it's the 5-95 rule.
Yeah.
When you go through enough startup cycles, you start to realize what matters and what doesn't.
Yep.
Because the number one variable that we're really dealing with is time. You only have a certain amount of finite time and resources. So, rookie Casey took everything seriously, and spent 100 calories on 1,000 things each. Old Casey is like, there are those 100 things, those will sort themselves out. That doesn't really matter. That's going to hurt, but who cares? It's 2 things. And by the way, I've done it so many times, it's 2 calories each. So I spent 4 calories getting the job done rather than 1 million.
And you didn't waste any time on 800 calories that you could have burned doing stupid stuff.
Which honestly, when people say, why do you purchase experience? It's really that. Yeah. Another great analogy is kids. Our first kid was exhausting. We did everything, slept with it. Our third kid sleeps in a rucksack and in the dark.
Yeah, autopilot. Yeah.
And is a lot easier from a calories, because we know when she's crying what matters, what doesn't. Is a 102 fever ER or 105? It's no different. My biggest hack is knowing what matters to spend your time on.
That's great. It's a brilliant one. So now I'm also curious. It's a journey when you're building a company, and there's the Harvard Business School version where everything just goes like this year over year, and you just go public 5 years later and you're on the cover of Wired magazine. That's great, but I don't know that story. It's so few and so rare. I wonder if there's an episode or a watershed moment where you say, "Oh my God, that might kill us." And obviously, you had to have made it through to get this far. What did you learn from that? Call it a colossal setback or mistake, or it could have been the markets. Just you didn't see the markets. Or I'm curious if you had a watershed moment like that, and how did it help you in the end?
Obviously, to be respectful to my former employers, I'll probably talk in generalities.
Yeah, but that's fine. No, I'm more interested in the lesson, not the company. Yeah.
I'm sorting through so many bad things right now. I'm just trying to pick which one. I have many. I'm just trying to picture one that's worthwhile to even talk about. One in particular was just working with the CEO and all of a sudden realizing, oh no, this is a much deeper issue regarding their management style, what's happening to them personally, uncovering. There's always skeletons, and then there's a whole boatload of other skeletons. And I think those are those watershed moments of, I've got a much greater turnaround on my hand than I thought.
Because the capacity of the CEO?
And what was becoming the incapacity of the CEO. And
that's what I meant. Is there lack of
yes, to a severe degree that is not for me to talk about. But basically, it's like, oh, am I the CEO now?
Right.
Like what? And obviously, they're still the CEO. So there's like, come in and help me build and fix certain things, and then come and help me. Oh my gosh, this is not what you told me it was. The learning lesson is. And I think a lot of operators and startup people, we all ask the question of, what could I have asked differently? What could I have diligenced differently, right? That's a very common one. I think you can get better at it. I think you can get better at avoiding things. So the learning lesson there is reference checks on the CEO. Now, people do that, but I think you're looking for certain things. Do people follow them? Would they work for them again? That tells a lot. Asking the question of, when have you been really upset and battled with the CEO? And ask 6 people. So it's all about the pattern. So a truth serum question I ask is, if I spoke to your last 20 colleagues or 20 managers or 20 friends or 20 ex-boyfriends and girlfriends, whatever, what will they instantaneously tell me? All the same thing in regards to, you name it, whatever it is, your strength, your what they can't stand about you. It's almost like a truth serum question. And anyways, my point is that learns a lot, because that's who I'm dealing with. I'm marrying the CEO.
And you're marrying them at their worst is what you have to prepare for most.
That's right. It's no different than any relationship. Right. So my hack is, think of it like a business marriage. How would you treat a marriage? is you travel with them, you try to understand. Obviously, you have a lot less time. So the hack is, how do you get to those values? How do you deal with conflict? The last part that I learned, and I'll write a little post about this, is your CEO has another title. Find out what it is. So what I realized was Steve Jobs is CMO and CPO. He's not just CEO. CEO is a title of the lead of all the execs. That is one job. But deep inside, before they were CEO, they have a passion and a superpower. So, for example, I obviously have a CFO-ish or COO-ish thing. So if I ever became CEO, you probably don't want to be my CFO.
Right, because you're going to eat their lunch if they're not prepared.
And not even eat their lunch. I have too strong of an opinion.
Yeah, got it.
Because you're not the CFO, I am. They don't like release it that easily.
Right.
Jeff Bezos is chief customer officer. I would not want to be in charge of customer service.
Right.
So that's the other hack, is when you pick a job, are you complimentary or stepping right into their lane?
No, it's great. I'm curious, how often have either you played the role or you've worked with a CEO who's really a CEE, a chief executive everything? Like they stick their nose in everywhere they...
Oh, yeah. The answer is yes. I've had two of them.
Well, early on, kind of everybody's a CEE because you don't have the staff. But that parsing, I find it's hard to scale if you keep all those roles. You can't do them all at a certain point. But
I mean, yeah, you're a leadership coach. I don't need to tell you, one of the biggest things for early founders or CEOs is letting go.
Yeah, it's a hard thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the other hack, we had more time, is obviously delegating everything and all things that you're not as good at.
Yeah.
And letting go. And that's a more powerful way, in my opinion, of growing, scaling than what I call Rambo. Rambo fights wars by himself, but guess what? I would rather bet on an army than Rambo.
Me too. No, that's great. You mentioned reference checks. You also asked about other hacks that people had. One of the great hacks that I heard, which made perfect sense, and I had never heard it before, was they back channel versus reference checks. The theory being, you will only give people who are going to speak highly of you as references.
Yeah.
So I can check them all and I might get skewed. And so what you do is privately, you just back channel and call people and say, do you know this guy? Yeah, I worked for him. Oh, great. Would you mind talking to me about it? That's not a reference check. That's a back channel.
Yeah, sorry. That's a better way. So the answer is I do both.
Got it.
And this goes back to, when you add up both, you will find the truth.
Oh, interesting.
Because it's all consistency. So if 8 out of 10 say, I'll tell you, one of them was a very interesting, they said the same thing and it was not apparent through all my meetings with the CEO. I was like, I would never have guessed that. I was like, really? And I would almost doubt them. Yeah. So one of them was like, he has a short leash. And I go, what do you mean? Like, he'll just cut you.
Right.
And I'm like, well, and then I'm talking to him, and then, you hear stories. I'm like, that doesn't add up. And everyone would say it. And then 3 years into my business marriage, I would look back like, God, the minute he's decided he's done with you,
you're out.
You're out. Yeah. And I was like, so the truth, and there's back channels that said that. There was his reference checks that said it. Yeah. So either way, you're right. But the duality of it is actually even better, because if they're so different, then there's another red flag.
Yeah.
Cool. Like, wow. But this one in particular was amazing. He's like, whoever you want, pick them. Right. Like, so you can tell by if they're propaganda or not. You can tell.
Yeah. My favorite back channeling is when people say, I don't feel comfortable talking about them. I go, thank you. That's all I needed to know. Yeah. You go, you seem like a reasonable human being. And if you're not willing to, okay, good. Yeah. Cause they don't want to have to see that person and get the back. And it's like, okay. Helpful. What do you optimize for maybe give us a little background of you running two companies, but they're sort of kissing cousins a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you optimize for on a daily basis?
That's a great question. I love what I do because they all interconnect. Yeah. So I'm not like running a pizza shop and a coal mine, right? Like it's So real quick, well, one, first and foremost, I love building stuff, whether it's Legos, IKEA furniture, or a company. My mind is a builder. And I think anyone listening who's an operator will be nodding their head right now. Like, we are addicted to building. Okay.
Right.
So my optimize for building something interesting that I think will provide value of some sort, either to the world or to pay for my kids' tuition, like, whatever it is. Like, so that's the overall, I think with most people, they're going towards something that they value. Now, when it comes to the Operators Guild, first and foremost, I am an operator. Operators Guild is a community of operators, right? So right there, it's just part of me getting better at what I do.
So it's like a giant Lego convention.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I kind of run a Lego convention. I'm a Lego builder.
Right.
And then FOG, which I don't think most people know, FOG Ventures stands for Operators Guild. And so what is it? It's the operating syndicate that is in OG, is within OG. Like you can call it kissing cousins. Absolutely. It's an investing syndicate that's separate, but not separate. The Venn diagram is 80% of, right. 90% of the members of OG are in FOG. Right. And so to use that great analogy is, we invest in other Lego companies. Sorry, we invest in products that help Lego builders. Right. So it's all one big Lego convention. On that side, it's investing in cool Lego products and tools. And one side, it's building with Lego people. The other is socializing with Lego people.
Right. So, talking about what you just built.
Yeah. So to me, it's all one big thing. Someone had said, "Are you full-time this or that?" And I made the mistake of saying, "Well, I'm part-time." Because no, you're full-time.
You're full-time in both. Yeah.
Everything.
They're both full-time roles.
But it's all one big thing. It's not three things. It's the legal entities. There's two, but to me, it's just building both, and they build together.
Got it.
So. But I optimize actually when it comes to OG and FOG for one thing, that the value and helpfulness to the members and the LPs
of the community.
It's very much the Jeff Bezos obsessive focus on who you're serving.
Right. Got it. There's a concept we've become pretty fluent with our leadership candidates. And that is, a company can only scale as fast as the fill in the blank, as the CEO, but you can actually apply that to anybody in the C-suite, because if your CMO is dragging, you're going to get your ass kicked. But talk to me about that. True or false? And how have you seen that play out?
The whole weakest link type, is that what you mean?
Not weakest link, but we take it as a CEO because we figure theory being a fish rots from the head down.
Yeah.
If your CEO is not scaling their own capacity or capability as a CEO, you think of Bezos when he started, he had one capability and they started with what? Selling books at airports.
Yep.
And he had to scale himself multiple times over, times 1,000 to still be the CEO 25 years later. And there's very rare, it's rare. Zuck, you see it, Bezos, not very many.
Yeah, there's no question. I that is the case. As you're saying that, I was going through probably over 20 CEOs. I've worked with 7 deeply, and every one of them, you keep evolving and growing, or you're out, or your business is out, because you are the limiting factor or the growth factor. You carry too much weight. So, because other philosophies are, well, if you hire a really smart team around you, they can build ahead of you. Not if you're in their way. You could, but here's even if they'll just leave. People that if you're in their way and they think, so that's the other thing. So they are the limiting factor. Even if you hire the best team in the world, as long as you're in their way or help, in front of them, you got to keep running fast. Otherwise, they're going to knock into you.
My experience is that they go across the street and set up shop and compete against you.
That's exactly.
As long as you're the CEO, they can kick your ass.
There's a very interesting thing called, do you want to be rich or do you want to be king?
Oh, interesting.
And that happens to a lot of founders, right? Is they want to be both. I think the really astute ones, well, so there's a quadrant, there's the Zuckerbergs and Bezos are the very rare. Rich
Very
king,
rare. Yeah.
right? And then there's like people that, I don't know, like Sergey and them, hey, Eric Schmidt, come on in.
Sure.
You go be king. Like, because that's not what we do. And
Right.
I think that's more the smart way to do it. But some people, it takes a long time for them to realize that.
Is that an ego thing, probably?
I think it's a lot of things. I definitely, I think it's just your baby.
That's what I get. People say, gosh, the board wants me to go still with my board seat, but they want to replace me. And they're offended by that. And you go, yeah, you've crapped out. You're flatlining at 5 million, and they can't afford to flatline at 5 million. So you can't do that for 2 years because you'll be dead. And so they replace you. It's not, I don't even think it's personal. It's just, like you say, the optimization for a VC is not your ego.
That's exactly right. I think once you realize like what's better for my baby, and if what's better for my baby is a different parent, it's a hard thing to swallow. But if you, who's first, your baby or you? If it's you, you're going to just hold on to this thing until, regardless of what happens to the baby. So
yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So the other area I'd love to delve in a little bit. We work a lot with clients on the ideal risk profile for a CEO. And they interpret that like there's one ideal risk profile for a CEO. And I hold it just the opposite, which is you have an inherent risk profile. As a parent, as an investor, as a CEO, how do we optimize your specific risk profile to match your company, as opposed to saying, Casey's not risk tolerant enough, or he's too risk tolerant. We need something more conservative.
Are you talking about when you're investing in someone? Are you talking about when you're joining someone?
No. So take Elon. Elon is he's got such a healthy appetite for risk that he will make bold promises and even spend crap tons of money on a thought he had on vacation.
Yep.
And you and I don't have that risk. We might be that direction, but we don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
And many companies couldn't manage, or they couldn't work under that risk profile. He's good for what he does, but your company or mine, that may be way too much. Conversely, companies I find that oftentimes die, they've got a pragmatist as a CEO. Nothing wrong with that, but they should be running a publicly traded company that's in maintenance mode.
I see what you're saying.
Is there an ideal for a CEO?
There's not an ideal, but there's no question certain people are better optimized for certain stages.
Yeah, I wondered if you'd go to stages. Yeah, makes sense.
Super stable cash flow business, utility regulation. Probably shouldn't have Elon as a CEO.
Right. Nuclear power plant.
Yeah,
no.
Because the electricity probably needs to keep running.
Yeah, don't press the red button that doubles the nuclear output.
No, I think that's absolutely so. When I see my operator community, I talk about people in breeds. The breed is we're stimulus junkies. So is it because we all happen to be one? No, because I found myself with people that are all in early to mid-stage companies.
Right. So they're all the same stage.
Because we could work at corporate, air quote, corporate just meaning late stage, more mature, slower growth, but we don't, because we prefer and have a higher desire. You can call it risk, you can call it growth, you can call it change, but there's no question the personality and the DNA you're born with will fit better stages. And if they're off alignment, it will definitely kill a business.
Following question to that. What's more important? The appropriate risk tolerance or risk profile fit, if you will, for your stage, or the courage to make the tough call outside of your risk profile?
This is a cheat. I'm going to go with option C.
I like it.
Option C is, they call it grit. It's determination. Whether you are competent, whether you have good decision making, I think one of the number one variables, well, A is a little bit of luck, not quitting. It's incredible what I've learned. Elon, yes, he's a genius. He does not quit.
No, he doesn't.
If you think about the ride of Tesla, the number of times Tesla would have been taken out. Now, obviously, it's a good product, it's a good idea, but we all saw him on the floor, of the factory. he does not quit. I've met, I'm thinking of a specific CEO I've worked with. I would have like, oh wow, there's no way they're going to make it past next year.
Right.
It's
Right.
4 years later.
Right. They're done. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's going to be a massive success, but let me tell you, the number one, if you cannot keep it going, you're dead already.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's option C. The most important thing is determination. And then of course we all get into like, are they smart? Do they have good decision making? And yes, all of that matters. But yeah, and I don't know if I answered your question. I just diverted.
No, it's good. It's a great way to. I'm not a big fan of grit, but I get the positive attribute. But what I find is for a lot of companies, it's an excuse to keep doing a stupid process way too long. I don't like the downside. I'm much more interested in innovation to say, wait a minute, is this working or not? Because maybe we should redesign the system rather than trying to run through a brick wall when it's a brick wall.
Okay, in that case, I totally understand the question. It's intellectual honesty and self-awareness. Mark Hawkins was speaking at OG, and he said the people I bet on, they're people who take feedback really well.
I was there. I loved it. It was great.
Yeah. And I was like, wait. He's like, if I hear someone that doesn't take feedback, they're done.
Right, because they're eventually gonna get in trouble.
So I'm sure Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Bezos, my bet, not knowing them personally, is they learn and evolve, they get feedback, and they change. So it's not decision making, it's they just learn from mistakes and they learn from others. So they're a constant learner. That's what I optimize for.
That's absolutely great. What's the one question I should have asked that I didn't about scaling?
I have a controversial one. In a lot of private meetings in the group, I come across the very, very common issues with the CEO, issues with the exec team, right? It's just frustrations of why do I work with people that don't see what I see? Why do they just hire their niece,
their brother-in-law? Yeah.
Like, oh my God. And someone said to me something really interesting. And he said, in California, you're made to believe that if you go to the voting booth, you can change taxes. There's a 1 in 350 million chance you will ever change the taxes in California.
Right.
And then there's moving to Texas. You have a 100% chance of changing your tax situation. I say that analogy or say that same thing in these private meetings are like, hey, I think you should leave. Meaning so much of what we talk about is growth, scale, go. Sometimes it's just not a fit.
Yeah.
Sometimes the hack is moving to Texas.
Right.
And all of a sudden your life just got a lot better, or you fit more with the Texans or whatever it is.
Right.
But what we do is natural non-quitters. I'm going to talk to the product person more. I'm going to show the CEO a blog and an article, and I'm going to teach. And you know what? You're not going to change your DNA.
Yeah.
In some cases it works, but in other cases you just realize the right answer is to leave.
Yeah. Let's go someplace else.
And it's so, no one likes saying that. Oh my God, you're a quitter. Did you just leave the team? You can say whatever you want. I actually believe that's an actual viable option.
That's an interesting way to do it. It's funny because that's the flip side of the grit conversation is the discernment associated with should we just quit, because determination and grit stubbornly is not a good way to go. We should actually stop doing this and start doing something else. That's great. That's great. Okay, last quick question. We do this with a lot of our founders and CEOs. If we had gone to your junior high school, so you're there 7th, 8th, 9th grade,
man.
right? Because everybody's awkward in junior high.
Yeah, right.
Right. And had we had one of those National Geographic film crews that follows around like a pack of llamas hyenas and captures who they are in the wild, had we followed you around for a semester in junior high, might we have come to the determination that we should place a huge futures bet on you as a dynamic CEO, or would we have said, Oh God, this is the last guy on earth.
Shit, I thought it was going to be like, what are you? Like, how much acne did you have? Oh.
Oh no, everybody had braces and acne and a bad haircut, and you thought you were cool. It's like, yeah.
Well, it's weird talking about yourself, but my guess is my energy level has never changed.
Okay.
My love for people has not changed. The biggest one, I was a nerd. You know, I worked really hard at school. So if you value that, if you value work ethic
or smarts,
yeah, sure. Then the answer, then the answer probably be yes. If you value coolness, if you value,
let's be clear. 7th grade coolness is not cool. Only 7th graders think they're cool.
If you value calmness, you know.
Oh, you were calm in 7th grade.
No, I wasn't.
Oh, I was going to say. I was going to say. I would guess you were a live wire.
If you value, charm and calmness, you would not have bet on me. So I'll allow you to take the bet. Some people bet on different things, but yeah, my characters are just. I work really hard, and I was very social, and sure enough, I don't think people's DNA changes that much, and that's a very similar thing at 41.
I punched my 7th grade teacher in the face, and they were going to throw me out, but the problem was it was a Catholic grade school with 8 grades, and my parents had 9 kids, like in 11 years. In 8 grades, there were 7 siblings of mine, and I think they worried and said, we can't throw him up because they might pull all those kids, and there's a ton of tuition on the trip. That's it. I think that's the only reason that saved me. But the guy called my friend who was from Spain. He was the first non-Caucasian to come into our lily white suburb. He called him the N-word, and I took offense, and he sent me out in the hallway because he had to quell the rebellion. And when he got out there, he challenged me to a fight. I mean, my last name is Hitler. I was in a fight every day of my life. I knew how to throw a punch. And so I hit him right in the jaw and knocked him down. And they were like, he was stunned. And so was the administration. They were like, what do we do with this kid? So I don't think I had anybody betting much money on me. And so, or maybe as an enforcer for an Irish gang or something. I don't know. But yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. No, I appreciate your answer. That's it's the most fun question we have with our founders.
That's really cool.
Because everybody's equal in 7th grade. There's nobody that wasn't their best 3 years of their life. You go,
that's funny.
No, those are hard years. Junior high are hard years. So that's great. That's great. Well, Casey, thank you so much for appearing on Genius at Scale. For our regular listeners, we look forward to seeing you on our next episode. All the best.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me.
All righty. Thanks for joining us today. Are you ready to scale? If so, invest 3 minutes in our Scalability Index. It's simple, easy, and gives specific guidance. Find it at evokinggenius.com/scale. All the best.